We have the normal evacuation procedure if there isn't a planned drill tonight. So if we hear the alarm, if we make our way out of the nearest exit, and we'll be guided by Alison, who'll take care of us, make sure that we all are accounted for properly. So on hearing the evacuation signal, just exit the building by the nearest exit and visitors report to assembly point G and all staff to their designated assembly point in the car park. Thank you. And number 2, apologies for absence. So I've got apologies from Councillor Clues and Substitute Councillor Smith. I have apologies from Councillor Simpson and Substitute Councillor Jens. I haven't heard from Councillor Humphreys, but I'm just trying to get hold of him. And I have apologies from Owen Phillips, the Substitute Councillor Hayden Phillips, and apologies from Councillor Taylor with Substitute Councillor Waffles. So welcome to Resources. And we also have Councillor Michael Osborne here tonight as well as a visitor. So welcome. Are there any disclosable pecuniary or non-pecuniary interests? You're all rushing at that one, so I'll take that as a no. And in terms of public participation, we have got someone with us this evening, but no questions have been put forward. So moving on to agenda item 5, minutes of the Resources Board held on the 3rd of September. Just have a look at those for signing. Are there any questions or any comments relating to those?
Really accept, Chair.
You're all happy for me to sign those?
Yep.
I've got a proposer there. Councillor Parsons a second. I saw Steve Stewart. All in favour? I'll sign those. Lovely. Make a big noise. Microphone. Thank you. That's lovely. So we'll move on to the main body of the agenda. So we've got agenda item 6. We'll do that, which is the capital programme. So our role tonight as the Resources Board is to note the progress made against the 24-25 capital programme to date and to approve a supplementary estimate of 263,520 to the programme, which is being fully funded through the UK SPF grant. Any comments or questions on that one? Councillor Walker.
Hi, sorry, it might be my naivety because I'm not usually on this board, but I just wondered could you just give us a quick summary as to what that would be with it being UK SPF? I just wondered in my head what.
Oh, the UK Shared Prosperity Fund.
Yeah, what the figure that we've suggested. How does it meet the UK SPF criteria? I think is what I'm trying to say. What is it that we're asking for that amount? Because it's quite a large amount. That's what kind of triggered it.
Okay.
And it could be my naivety because I'm not.
Yeah, it's not. We're not asking for that. The fund for that amount of money.
Right.
Yeah,
I'll try to explain. I've not explained that very well.
No, that's fine.
I think you know what I mean.
Yeah, absolutely. So what happens is we get an allocation from UK SPF, we get capital, we get revenue. So we've got a committee that allocate that money, and we need to put it into the capital programme so we can spend against it. It's fully funded, so we're just literally putting this money that we've had externally funded as income in as expenditure.
Thank you.
Does that make sense?
It does, absolutely. I think I read it the other way and I was thinking, what's that going to be spent on for that amount is what I was thinking in my head. That's a big amount.
Now, when we receive a grant, we have to recognise the income.
Sure, that's fine. I've got it now.
And it's in either revenue or capital, and in this case,
Long
it's in
hair,
capital.
yeah, bear with
No, that's absolutely fine. Any questions are always welcome. Any other questions on the UK SPF? That's Councillor
So
Barnett.
on the UK SPF, I think I'm not quite sure what the grant is for. Presumably we've got a grant to spend on something, and I'm not sure what it's to be spent on.
We were allocated, was it something like 1.9 million from the UK SPF as a council? And part of that is for capital, part of that is for revenue expenditure, and some part of that is for rural expenditure as well. When we receive that money, we have to acknowledge it as income into our accounts.
No, I understand that.
So that we can be spent against.
Is it earmarked to be spent on a particular purpose?
Not necessarily. Those things those grant applications come in and are allocated against them. So there is a grant body that sits, which is.
Oh, right. So it's not for our spend, it's for.
No, Not necessarily, it could
Sorry, that's
be
what I
if we
was
put a
thinking.
grant, a bid in towards that grant. So for example, things like the removal of equipment, play equipment in an area might have gone against that, things like that.
I think that's what I was getting
Yeah.
confused with as well, yeah.
Sorry.
Councillor Watson.
Yeah, sorry, Chair. So the money used to sit at county level. It was called the ERDF fund. ERDF, yeah, I can't remember the name. And that's typical acronym of it. It was then divided up into districts and boroughs. So effectively, it was split 5 ways within Warwickshire, and each of the districts and boroughs got a funding amount called UK SPF. It's a shared prosperity fund. It was also there to support business and learning and lots of good programs. So that's kind of where the fund came from. And each of the boroughs and districts have gone off and done their own thing. Interesting enough, just while we're talking about UK, it's going to change back in about a year's time under the devolution deal. So it will go back to county level
Yeah.
rather than remain at district. And it's a kind of a bit of a pilot. I think they're given a year's extension while we have the transitional changeover. But that's where it came from. It's for community funds and it's for business and learning and those sorts of things.
Okay. Are there any more questions on that supplementary estimate? If not, I'll move that from the chair.
Sorry, I've got a question about one other thing
Okay.
on this item. In Appendix A, just going to close that window. In the second box of Appendix A, there is, I've lost it now,
Second box.
fire door replacement programme,
Yes.
which we've got over 300k allocated for, but we've only spent 2.5 so far.
Hang on a minute, where are you?
So this is on.
Oh, yeah, yeah.
Yes, I mean, I don't know whether some of that might have been proposed for Old Bank House, which has been put on hold, but I was quite surprised that we spent so little of it. I just wondered if what the plan is around that.
There's a programme of events around the fire door replacement. So the original budget was of 24-25. Then there was a carry forward from 23-24, which is what gives you your 331. So this is a long-term project. So it's been going over several years. So actually, what's remaining, if you look there, is 328k. So we have only spent 2,500. But I'm sure Angela will talk to you about the programme.
This is general fund, not
Oh,
housing.
it's not housing revenue account.
This
Oh,
is-
right.
this is-
Council
so-
buildings.
Yeah, so
Yeah.
this includes this building, leisure centres. It did include Old Bank House, but we've deferred that because of obviously nobody in there at the moment. But the contract was signed a few weeks ago, so the works are due to. They might have even started actually. They're imminent. So that will, and the
So that's
programme
gonna
is
happen
really
quite
quick.
quickly.
They're doing the buildings all at the same time. So by the next time we report, that should be a lot
Okay.
higher to spend.
Thank you.
All right. So I've just said just before we had the following question, that I move that from the chair. Is anyone happy to second that? Councillor Watson, all in favour? It's all, that's unanimous. Thank you very much. Moving on to agenda item 7, which is our general fund budgetary control report for April to September. This is just for noting and the board requests and any board requests for further information that would assist us in monitoring the budget for the next 12 months. Anything on that one? Anything on agenda item 7? Councillor Barnett.
Not so much a question, but in Appendix C, I noticed that the investment income has done substantially better than budgeted and is now forecast to be about 2 million rather than the 1 million original budget, which I thought was pretty good. And no one's going to complain about that. I just thought I'd highlight it.
No, it's great, isn't it? There's an upside occasionally to higher interest rates. But unfortunately, we don't all feel that at times, do we? No. Yes, it's been good for us this year from that perspective. Any other questions on the general fund? Okay, I'll happily move that from the chair. No one second, Councillor Davey. Thank you. All in favour? That's unanimous. Thank you. And then moving on to agenda item 9. Is that right? No.
Eight.
8. You just get on paper. Oh, here we are. This is the again the supplementary estimate for development control appeal costs. So this is a supplementary estimate for 225,000 to fund the cost of planning appeals. So obviously with some changes to planning, we're anticipating and have received more appeals than we have in the past. So this is funds to support that. Are there any questions in relation to that? Councillor Parsons?
I'm assuming that amount does it include the amount for the Hodges development appeal? Is that,
I don't know about the specific element of that. In that additional amount is the total amount required to satisfy this next up until March, end of March, that is required. So it will form part of the overall pot.
yes.
Councillor?
Yeah, just, I took a different interpretation than you, Chair, is that rather than us defending the appeals, it might be where we're actually sort of like appealing decisions ourselves.
No.
I'm thinking particularly in relation to things such as Bramford Tunnel.
No, it's not for our appeals. It's for when things are appealed against
Against
us.
us.
Yeah,
Okay.
against us, for planning.
Oh, thank you for that clarification. Just following that, Chair, do we think that there might be any requests for re-sectioning of finance to fund any such action in the future? Because we weren't planning necessarily on having to go to a judicial review in relation to Bramford Tunnel or subsequent planning decisions that have gone against us in relation to that and other HS2 matters.
No, they're somewhat sort of come up, don't they? And we'd rather not have to spend some of that money, but we have to at different times, don't we? So I don't know whether or not there's a specific budget for us appealing. Generally not, but it's because we know that we're going to have appeals against us because a part of our core business is to deliver planning decisions. So that's part of our core business. So it's natural to assume that in the course of our core business, that we'll incur the expense of being taken to appeal. Not necessarily that things will happen within the borough that we will want to take to judicial review. Alison?
I think just to say, when we get any of those particular cases, then we would look at that sort of individually rather than having a general budget, because you'd never have a budget that's the right amount for something like that. So we'd have to bring a separate report through and ask for the funding at that time. With the planning appeals, with this budget, we have got a budget. It's just that we need quite a bit more.
Yeah. Councillor Waffles.
Thank you. And I think from the planning board, they're looking at the process of planning applications and so on. So that will probably tighten things up going forward anyway, won't it? So hopefully that will then have a repercussion on less being able to appeal against decisions, I guess, if that's a thing.
Yeah. I think there'll always be the right of appeal
Of course.
in any process, and I think because at the moment there's an uncertainty about the direction of planning legislation. So I think people are taking the opportunity to appeal at the moment, though that's somewhat ambiguous. So at the moment we anticipate that there would be more planning appeals, and then maybe into next year as well. So we'll have to look at that when we budget again. Anyone else got any questions on that one? Okay, if we're all happy with that, do I have a proposer? Councillor Watson, a second. I saw Councillor Davey there. All in favour? Thank you, that's unanimous. And then if we move to agenda item 9, which is the homeless strategy. This has been around a couple of times now. We had the presentation from the consultant, and it's again been to this board, and this is essentially come to us for final sign-off. We've had a huge amount of work done on our behalf and a lot of input from the team, so I think it's about time we sort of got the benefit of that and actually been able to start to work with it and implementing it. But that's just my view. Any questions on the homeless strategy, although it's been a document we've been around a few times now? Any questions on that one, Councillor Barnett?
As you said, I think it's a good document. I think we should proceed with it. It's just, I guess it's what more the request for a follow-up, really. If you look at the cases of households, where we've got to UG2, it's quite clear that in the last few years there's been a marked increase in the number of single parents with children, with dependent children, mainly female. And I know one of the drivers that's called out in the strategy is domestic violence. And I just wondered if it's possible to get some idea of what proportion of those are linked to domestic violence.
I'm sure that in the collation of the statistics that have been presented to us, some of that would be available in the data. I'm sure that that's available in the data, so we might, yeah, I don't think that, we can have a look
Yeah.
and see whether or not we can just cut that slightly differently, so it shows what you want to see. Because we've got the build up of that, so we must have a drill down.
Yeah, I just thought it might kind of dictate where we might want to focus, resources if it is a particular large factor. But
Well, looking at the reports, I mean, the increase in domestic abuse is somewhat
called
of
out
an
one.
alarming increase, isn't it? Over that period of the last 3 years. When you look at all the other stats, they seem to be going a better way than that one, should we call it? So there's obviously an issue within the borough that we obviously need to get behind and support, and provide support through this strategy. Okay. So our role tonight, our recommendation tonight is to agree and accept this final draft. So
Yeah,
do I
I'll move that.
propose that? Thank you, Councillor Barnett, second. Councillor Stewart, all in favour? That's unanimous. Thank you very much. Moving to right, agenda item 10, which is a follow-on for us from the Grenfell Tower inquiry. There's obviously quite a substantial report there before and advises us as a board about the implications for us as a council. And whilst we don't have any of the high-rise buildings, high-risk buildings, and we don't have anything of that materials that have been involved in that, there are recommendations and there are parts of the report that apply to us all. So that obviously the first part of the recommendation is that we note the report and that any implications for us as a council in relation to our domestic stock are considered, and that with a policy on dealing with fire risks in council's domestic stock be approved. So there's that in there as well, that policy, and that a budget of 800,000 be allocated to support the continuation of the programme to provide new fire doors for flats to be approved. So are there any questions on that this evening? Councillor Parsons, and Councillor Stewart.
I also noted that in that the requirements for smoke alarms, CO2 alarms and the like have generally been sort of heightened as a result of this report. And I'm sure we're looking at that, but it's something that we really want to be ahead of the game, essentially, and making sure that we are getting that absolutely right. Yes, we don't have high-rise buildings, and that's a bit of a blessing in many ways. But on the other hand, there are the generic things which we need to be right on top of. And I'm sure Angela is. That's there. Okay.
Thank you. Councillor Stewart.
Thank you, Chair. Just a point of information, really. Well, I'd like to thank the officers for the report, which I thought was really, really good. The one thing that I'm interested in is in relation to the fire doors themselves and the budget. Is there any issue that we're presently experiencing in relation to supply of fire doors? Because there's obviously a big demand following the inquiries from Grenfell. I'm just wondering how we were positioned in that particular bud fight.
Angela.
No, I'm pleased to advise the board that we haven't got any current issues with manufacturing and delivery of the fire doors. Certainly post 2017, that was a significant issue. All of the fire door providers that we used at that time just basically shut up shop because they needed to reconsider how they were doing things. So we did have a period when it was difficult to do that, but I think the industry now has moved on, and no, we haven't got a problem with getting the fire doors.
Thank you. I've got Councillor Watson and then Councillor Osborne.
Yes, it's a follow-on actually from the report. Obviously, the James Judith's report from Grenfell. This is phase 2, round 2 of the report, which we know. She talked about during her Grenfell report about the golden thread of information. And one of the big failings at Grenfell, which was a construction failing, was that that golden thread of information when changes had been made wasn't maintained and available. So people didn't know. Are we confident that within our own stock, we've got that golden thread of information? And I know from our fire risk assessment that will kind of be asked for now. But how confident are we around that information?
I think over the last 6 or 7 years, as we've built a capital programs team, we have improved and improved on that as we've done a lot of work on flats. We've had our own new builds, and that information has been provided and is much better shape than probably in the past. And then, as you say, it's about where we've got older buildings, making sure that we gather that information, or if we haven't got it, we have to go and get it. We have to have new reports, new surveys, so that we've got it. But that capital programme team that I've mentioned in here are really quite on the case and competent and experienced enough to know that we need all of that information, and then we put it on our mainframe system against the properties in the blocks.
Thank you. That's Ross.
Thank you, Chair. Yeah, mine's just, it's in relation to this, the Redcare system that a lot of councils use. Next August, that's being turned off. So it's the monitoring system that it's going completely. So the law now states that it has to be a Digicom system. And I've noticed through experience that the price of getting that change at the moment has doubled and now nearly trebling because they know that everybody's going to be moving because the Redcare system's being withdrawn. So it could be quite a costly exercise.
Okay, Councillor Watson.
So, not strictly accurate. Redcare was going to dissolve, then they decided not to resolve, then they re-established. I believe Redcare are going to be bought by another. And apologies because I operate in the fire security industry, so I know that. So Dualcom, who are the providers of the new system, so we used to go to Redcare because it had dual path, it had 2 signalling paths. That was the old thing we used to do. So lots of the nurse calls, things like that, were always on Redcare. Over the last, well, probably about 20 years, that's progressively changed. So there are lots of other suppliers out there that provide dual path signalling, albeit they're switching off 3G at the moment, which is causing a few issues around. But there are others available. So it's right to have a concern, but the whole security industry and the signalling industry are well aware of the Redcare changes. And so I'd be surprised if we wasn't in a relatively comfortable place. And apologies, Chair, it's just that kind of operate in that space. So I know all
It's
about the
useful
signalling.
insight that we would not necessarily otherwise know, so it's really
Yeah.
helpful.
Yeah.
Thank you.
So, but it's right to raise it, but as I understand it, so to know who set the company up and used to, that there's a thing that Redcare is probably gonna continue, but not as BT Redcare, that brand will go, but the signal devices will stay.
But that's something we could then have a close eye on.
Yeah, if I could just come back on that, what the element that's going that I'm aware of is that it goes down telephone lines at the moment. Redcare.
So that's slightly different to Redcare. So Redcare is on what's called the old PSTN, public telephone network, which was with 50 volts to the exchange.
Yeah.
That is being switched off 2027. I think it's December 27, it'll all be gone. So you will no longer get 50 volts to the exchange. But what will happen is you'll provide power locally, so it will still signal. So it's a slight change. You've got the PSTN is being switched off, 3G is being switched off, 2G will be switched off at some point.
Yeah.
But there's a lot of change in the comms industry. But yeah, that concern is they should still operate. There's lots of testing going on with OpenReach to make sure that things like nurse call and the panic alarms, which was the big one, will continue to operate.
Thank you. Do I have any other hands up for that one? If not, then is anyone happy to propose those recommendations? Councillor Barnett, and second. Councillor Jens, thank you. All in favour? That's unanimous, thank you. And then we'll move to exclusion of the public and press. Agenda item number 11. So I'll just read this out, thank you. To consider in accordance with section 100A of the Local Government Act 1972, whether it is in the public interest that the public and press be excluded from the meeting for the following items of business on the grounds that they involve the likely disclosure of exempt information as defined by Schedule 12A to the Act. So do I have a proposer? Thank you, Councillor Watson, and a second, Councillor Davey. Thank you. All in favour? Thank you very much. I'll give you everybody a few minutes just to